A synthesis essay is an argumentative piece of writing. It is an argumentative essay, an expository essay, in which the author states and supports a thesis by combining ideas from two or more sources. Okay, that may be a mouthful, but let me show you the 3 steps to writing a synthesis essay. First, let me show you the visuals for the 3 steps, and then I'll walk you through the steps in detail. Step number 1 is analysis. So first, you need to analyze your sources, meaning you need to identify their main and their supporting ideas. In step 2, you form a new thesis from the main ideas of the sources you just analyzed. Okay, don't worry about it. I'll walk you through exactly how to do that. And the final step, synthesis. Now that you have your main point, you pull the evidence from your sources and you use it in support of your new thesis. Okay, so let me show you exactly how that works step by step in detail. Step 1, analyze the main sources. The main sources are the pieces that you are trying to synthesize. These could be articles written by experts on the subject, including scientific papers. It could be works of fiction. It could be historical primary sources. And it could be your own previously written essays or papers. Now, don't try to do a lot of research. This is very important. Don't try to do a lot of research, then collect and read all of the sources and synthesize everything into one argument. Don't do it because it doesn't work. It's too much information to put together because different articles, different sources contain a lot of contrasting and often contradictory information. Just pick 2 or 3 sources to synthesize. You can later use other sources as supportive, as supporting sources. But the main sources that you're synthesizing should be 2 or 3 at the most. Here are some criteria for choosing your main sources. Now, they must have something in common, such as a subject, a theme, or an argument. Choose pieces that you find interesting or fascinating, so it would be easier for you to write about. Sources that you are familiar with already are great because you know something about them already. Shorter is better than longer, obviously, but true. The easier the source is to read for you, to read and understand, the better. For our example, I'll choose 2 of Shakespeare's sonnets. Why? Because I'm really familiar with them and I have taught one of them in class many times. They are short and sweet and they're fun to analyze. Each one contains a crystal clear argument, that's very important, and they share main subjects and themes. Okay? They have a lot in common, and that's why they make 2 excellent sources to synthesize. Let's do the analysis part. And here's how we do it. We want to identify the main and the supporting ideas, whatever they may be. Analysis is just a process of, number 1, breaking a whole into parts, identifying the relationships among the parts, and deriving one main idea that unites the parts. Our first source is Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. Shall I compare it to a summer's day? This is Shakespeare's most popular sonnet. Before we continue, so we don't do a full analysis right here in this video because it's not about analyzing poetry, I have a full analysis of Sonnet 18 and I'll include the link here in the upper right hand corner. Okay, this sonnet contains 2 subjects because Shakespeare begins by saying, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So the 2 subjects of comparison, this is a comparative essay. It's not an essay, it's a sonnet, but it really works like a comparative essay. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So we have 2 subjects, thee meaning you and summer's day. And it is structured this way. First, Shakespeare talks about the summer in lines 3 and 8. It's like the body of the sonnet. And then the second section is devoted to you. And it begins with the word but. But you see, there's a turn here. In line 9, there's a turn. But your eternal summer shall not change. And this section is about you. So these are 2 sections of the sonnet. In section 1, Shakespeare talks about the summer primarily in terms of its longevity. And he does the same about you. He talks about you in terms of longevity as well in section 2. Now, let's break it down even more. The reality is that Shakespeare uses 3 criteria of comparison. He says you are more lovely, you are more mild, meaning more temperate, and you also last longer. Your longevity is greater than that of the summer. So as a result, here's the complete argument. You are more lovely, more temperate, and more long-lasting than the summer. So this is our source 1. And again, if you want to check out the full analysis, definitely check out the link that I just gave you. Here's our second source. This is Shakespeare's Sonnet 30. Now, in lines 1 through 4, Shakespeare gives us the general idea. The same way he does it in lines 1 and 2 in the previous sonnet, in Sonnet 30, he does it in the first 4 lines, but it's not a complete argument either. But it's okay. So in lines 1 through 4, he introduces the general idea that thoughts of the past bring about pain. Okay, fair enough. Okay, the common human experience. And again, we have 2 sections. A section about past pain, that's section 1. And again, we have section 2 that begins with a turn, but. You see with the word but. The word but introduces the second section. But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored and sorrows end. The whole point of this sonnet is that in section 1, I experience a lot of pain when I think about the past. But in section 2, however, when I think of you, all my sorrows disappear. And this is the gist of our second source. Step 2, form a new thesis based on the main ideas in the sources. And again, this is the visual. We form a new thesis just from the main ideas, not from any of the supporting ideas. No, from the main ideas. And we already know our main ideas, so we are ready to form our new thesis. Now, let's revisit the main ideas from our sources. We know that the 2 sonnets have some subjects and themes in common. Let's take a look at their summaries together to have an overall picture. Now, in Sonnet 18, Shakespeare is at war with time because it wants to kill your beauty. It wants to kill the beauty of the subject of the sonnet. And his solution is the sonnet because it immortalizes you. Now, in Sonnet 30, Shakespeare is also at war with time because the thoughts of the past bring him pain. And the solution is to think of you because this relieves the suffering. Okay? Now, we can see that in both sonnets, the author seems to be at war with time. But unlike in Sonnet 18, where the enemy is the future, in Sonnet 30, the enemy is the past. See, now we have identified a difference, but the similarities are very important and apt for a good synthesis. Also, the solution in both sonnets is rooted in the present moment. Very interesting. That's another similarity. It's something that unites these 2 sources. In Sonnet 18, this is the sonnet itself, which immortalizes you. Now in Sonnet 30, this is you, because you provide the relief. So we have a lot of points of connection. If we have 1, 2, or 3 points of connection between the sources, that's great. We can also see that the real subject of each sonnet, something or someone each sonnet is really about, is you, or the human being to whom the sonnets are addressed. Okay, important. That's another point of connection. Given all this information, let's write the full thesis statement. In his sonnets, Shakespeare seems to be at war with time. Sonnets 18 and 30 exemplify this idea very well. In Sonnet 18, Shakespeare is at odds with time in terms of the future because it threatens to destroy the beauty of his beloved human being. In Sonnet 30, time is again the enemy, though the poet focuses on the past which brings him suffering. Finally, in both sonnets, the solution is something or someone rooted in the present moment which robs time of its power to destroy beauty or cause pain. And let's take a look at the structure of this thesis statement, because the thesis statement is really our outline. And we have our outline right here. See, Shakespeare is at war with time in his sonnets, in Sonnet 18 and Sonnet 30. Our new thesis is a synthesis of 2 main points, as you can see. This is our main point. Now, each main section supports the thesis. And the supporting points will come from where? They will come from our sources. And that's our next step. So this brings us to step 3. Write the rest of the essay using ideas from the sources. And here's how it looks visually. We already have our new main point. We have our 3 supporting points: the future, the past, and the present, which is the solution. So we have those. Now all we need to do is pull the evidence to support our new thesis from the supporting ideas in the sources we analyzed. Now we have enough information to outline the body of our essay. And as we already know, it's going to have 3 sections. Here's section 1, Sonnet 18, Shakespeare versus time in terms of the future. That's what it's going to be about. So here's our first subsection. The summer's beauty fades fast, according to Sonnet 18. Compared to the summer, you are immortal. There we go. Here's section 2, about Sonnet 30. Shakespeare is again at war with time, but in terms of the past. Subsection 1, thinking of the past brings suffering. Subsection 2, the poet laments friends, lovers, and old grievances. And now our main section 3. The present happens to be the solution. Subsection 1, or subsection A, you are immortalized by the sonnet, and that's Sonnet 18. Here's our first subsection of the section, right? The solution is the sonnet, and it is rooted in the present. Great. Now, the next subsection of section 3. The solution is you. That's Sonnet 30. Again, you relieve the suffering, and you are rooted in the present. You see how this works? And now we have this beautiful structure of the body of this synthesis essay. Since the body of the essay consists of paragraphs, let's take a look at how a body paragraph is structured. We begin a body paragraph with a lead sentence, and a lead sentence is like a thesis for the paragraph. Next, we have an explanation. This would be the next most general statement in the body paragraph. And finally, we present examples, and examples are the most specific part of a body paragraph. Let's do an example. Here's our sample body paragraph. This one comes from section 1, paragraph 1, basically the first paragraph of the body of the essay. In Sonnet 18, Shakespeare is at war with time because as it proceeds into the future, it destroys beauty. Beauty is important to Shakespeare, as is evident in line 2, where he declares his intention to compare the subject, you, with the summer in terms of beauty and mildness. The protest against time begins in line 4, where the poet states that the summer has all too short a date. Then Shakespeare picks it back up again in lines 7 and 8, where he laments that any beauty must end sooner or later, either by chance or by eternal law of change. Note several things about this paragraph. It focuses on one subject that we have in our outline. In other words, you should be sticking to your outline. The subject is the summer and its mortality. It begins with a lead sentence which summarizes the paragraph perfectly. It proceeds to an explanation why beauty is important in the sonnet. And finally, it ends with examples from particular lines, including a direct quotation. After we've written out all of the body paragraphs, we need a conclusion. And here's our conclusion paragraph. And it should be a simple restatement unless you want to do something else in your conclusion. Unless you know that your professor wants something other than a simple restatement, just restate what you've stated before. And here's how it works in our essay. Shakespeare's sonnets have an important theme in common. They seem to resist time. In Sonnet 18, the poet laments the ever-changing quality of nature driven by time into the future. Future represents the death of beauty, potentially the beauty of his object of affection. In Sonnet 30, the past is the challenger because it brings about suffering. But Shakespeare finds a way to rob time of its destructive power. He uses subjects that are based in the present moment to effectively counter time's evil intent. As you can see, we haven't added anything new. We have simply restated everything that we have already said in the thesis statement and throughout the essay. And this is how you write a synthesis essay. Hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in an upcoming video.